On any given day, 20 million barrels of oil, roughly 1/5 of everything the world burns. One narrow waterway, 1/5 of global oil.
This is the Strait of Hormuz, not just a shipping lane, but the economic jugular vein of the modern world.
A single very large crude carrier, a VLCC, holds 2 million barrels of oil. Hormuz handles
84% of everything passing through Hormuz is headed to Asia, to China, India, Japan, South Korea.
China alone imports 11 to 12 million barrels a day, with 40 to 45% coming from Gulf producers who must pass through this one gate.
If this channel closes, the disruption isn't measured in days. It's measured in global economic shock.
In the 1980s, when the Iran-Iraq War turned the strait into a shooting gallery, Saudi Arabia began building a way out.
At maximum capacity, the petroline can push 7 million barrels a day. Impressive depth, until you remember Hormuz carries 20 million.
Saudi Arabia has pushed Yanbu exports to 5 million barrels per day, more than double pre-conflict levels. Still less than a third of Hormuz flows.
final cost, $4.2 billion, overrunning by 900 million, capacity, 1.8 million barrels per day.
Iraq's Kirkuk-Ceyhan pipeline adds another 1.6 million in theory, but repeated political disputes keep it running at a fraction of that. Add it all up, and existing pipelines cover at best 5.5 million barrels a day, leaving a 14 million barrel gap that simply has no answer.
Here's the cruel irony. Even if the pipeline is rated for 7 million barrels, the Yanbu terminal can physically load only 3 to 4 million onto ships.
Capacity or paper? Bottlenecks in steel and concrete. Theory meets reality at the port gate. The UAE has built 4 to 2 million barrels of underground storage at Fujairah, a meaningful buffer.
Punchin Coders. In 2008, a radical proposal emerged: build a 905-kilometer canal cutting through Saudi.
Earlier designs imagined a canal 150 meters wide and 25 meters deep. The price tag, $200 billion in 2008. Costs today would be many multiples of that figure.
It would take 10 to 15 years to build. Longer than the Suez expansion. Longer than the Panama Canal Lock project.
And in peacetime, when Hormuz is open and safe, no shipper would pay canal tolls. Revenue projections collapse before the first ship ever arrives. In March 2021, the Ever Given ran aground in the Suez Canal for 6 days. Daily losses, $9 to $12 billion.
A new canal wouldn't eliminate choke points. It would create a new one. This time, one that cost $200 billion to build.
Pipelines have one fatal flaw. They don't move. A supertanker can reroute. A pipeline cannot.
In 2019, Houthi drones struck pumping stations on the east-west pipeline.
Infrastructure is a static target. Missiles find static targets.
In late 2023 and 2024, Houthi attacks on Red Sea shipping disrupted the very route that Yanbu tankers must follow to reach Asia.
Bypass pipelines don't reduce vulnerability. They redistribute it, creating new targets, each requiring active defense.
Iraq produces more than 4 million barrels per day. Most of it comes from Basra Fen, sitting right on the Persian Gulf, directly behind Hormuz.
The Kirkuk-Ceyhan route reaches only northern fields. Southern Iraq, the heart of Iraqi oil, has nowhere else to go.
When Hormuz effectively closed in early 2026, Iraqi storage tanks filled to capacity, unsold crude. A budget in freefall.
A new pipeline from southern Iraq to Oman or the Red Sea could theoretically be built in 5 to 10 years.
Not all Gulf nations are equal before the choke point. Saudi Arabia and the UAE have bypass pipelines. Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar do not. If Saudi Arabia and the UAE keep exporting while their neighbors are blocked, they profit from higher prices at their rivals' expense.
Kuwait would need to pipe oil through Saudi territory. Qatar would need UAE cooperation. Every bypass option runs through a political relationship. The old IPSA-2 pipeline from Iraq through Saudi Arabia? Saudi Arabia oil is only half the story. 20% of global liquefied natural gas trade also passes through Hormuz Dul, and LNG cannot be piped.
Qatar and the UAE together supply nearly 20% of global LNG. If Hormuz closes, that supply is simply stranded.
Liquefying natural gas means cooling it to negative 162 degrees Celsius. That requires a specialized supply chain with no shortcut.
The IEA estimates a Hormuz closure would remove more than 300 million cubic meters of LNG per day.
Bangladesh, India and Pakistan sourced almost two-thirds of their LNG through Hormuz in 2025. There is no substitute route.
Natural gas runs 50% of Bangladesh electricity. Cut the LNG, cut the power. No engineering workaround exists.
Someone always asks, what about moving oil by truck?
A supertanker carries 2 million barrels. A truck carries, at best, 700. To replace
the daily Hormuz volume, you'd need hundreds of thousands of trucks moving continuously, every day, forever. The trucks need roads. Roads need maintenance, fuel, drivers, and they travel fixed routes.
The world always knew Hormuz was a risk, and it chose, rationally, to accept that risk.
The Petroline was built to provide breathing room during short crises, not to carry Saudi Arabia's entire export load indefinitely.
The implicit bet, the US Navy would reopen Hormuz if it ever truly closed. Full blockades last days or weeks, not months.
Against that assumption, building infrastructure to handle only a portion of flows was economically rational.
That assumption is now being stress-tested. Hormuz effectively closed for weeks at a time in early 2026, for the first time in decades.
Decades engineering frozen for.
The alternatives are too expensive, too slow to build, too vulnerable to attack, and too small to fill the gap.
The only real solution isn't in an engineering office.
It's in a negotiating room.
If we agree to the terms, we can move forward.
We understand the urgency, but our stakeholders require further guarantees.
In the absence of political solutions, the world keeps investing in partial answers. Marginal improvements, not fundamental ones.
20 million barrels, 1/5 of global consumption, a 21-mile strait, and no practical way around it.
Some choke points, as the U.S. Energy Information Administration puts it, simply have no practical alternatives.